Okay, let's get into this. Imagine for a second one of the absolute giants of basketball,
Mm,
a player whose impact, whose sheer force on the court was just undeniable.
right.
And picture him on the verge, right on the edge, of joining maybe the most iconic team, a dynasty, really.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this wasn't just some rumor mill stuff. It was, according to the player himself, something that almost happened.
Close.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really digging into a specific documented near miss in NBA history, a moment that honestly could have just dramatically reshaped everything legacies, championships, you name it.
Absolutely.
We're focusing on a really surprising story shared by a retired MVP about a trade that was apparently all agreed upon, done deal.
That's what we thought.
Exactly.
Mm.
Only for it to collapse right at the last minute, a trade that would have sent him to Los Angeles Lakers.
Incredible.
Our source material for this deep dive is an article that really brings this whole thing to light.
Hmm.
And crucially, it draws directly from the player's own account.
Which gives it that weight, that authenticity.
Totally. So our mission here is pretty clear. We want to meticulously unpack every key detail the source gives us. Who was involved? What were the exact circumstances? The play-by-play of this almost trade?
Yeah, what actually happened according to this report?
And what does the source itself suggest might have been the fallout, the
Mhm.
potential consequences? And we're sticking strictly, exclusively to what's in this source material.
Got it. No outside speculation, just what the article tells us.
Right. And the player, the guy at the absolute center of this whole compelling what if, whose career almost took this massive detour,
Yeah.
well, our source identifies him right away. Charles Barkley.
Ah, okay, Barkley. Makes sense. A huge name, huge personality.
Exactly. And the article, our source, it doesn't just drop his name. It immediately starts building the case for why this is such a significant story, right?
Mhm.
It anchors his importance with some really specific career achievements.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't assume, just how big a deal he was. It lays it out. The source starts by framing him, giving us these credentials that, yeah, they really paint a clear picture of his status in the game.
It really does. No messing around.
Yeah.
The source puts him right up there in the pantheon,
Uh-huh.
explicitly calling Charles Barkley one of the best 25 players in NBA history.
Wow. Okay, top 25 all time. That's rarefied air, as they say.
It is. That's a huge statement right off the bat. It immediately tells you we're talking about an elite player, an all-timer.
Absolutely. And being put in that group, the top 25 ever, just like the source says,
Yeah.
well, it signals a career that wasn't just good, it was dominant. Sustained impact over years. It sets the context immediately for why a trade involving him would be, potentially league altering.
And it builds from there. The source also makes sure to tell us he is a basketball Hall of Famer.
Right. Another major piece, Hall of Fame induction. That's the ultimate recognition, isn't it? It's reserved for players whose careers truly left a mark, a lasting legacy on the sport.
It signifies that long-term impact.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not just about stats for a few years. It's about the whole career, the whole contribution. So when the source says Hall of Famer, it's basically confirming his spot among the absolute legends of basketball.
He's also listed, importantly, as a former MVP.
Hmm. The Most Valuable Player Award. That means for at least one season, the consensus was that he was the single best, most impactful player in the entire league.
The absolute peak.
The peak. The source highlighting this tells us he reached that pinnacle of individual performance. An MVP season means you are operating on a whole different level that year. It's a massive achievement.
And one more key credential the source provides. 11-time NBA All-Star.
11 times. Think about that. That points to incredible consistency, incredible longevity at the highest level. Being named an all-star means you're recognized as one of the very best players in the league that year.
And to do it 11 times.
Yeah, that's well over a decade of being considered elite, year in and year out. It shows this wasn't some flash in the pan, it was sustained excellence.
So you take all these pieces the source gives us, top 25 all-time, Hall of Famer, former MVP, 11-time All-Star, and the picture becomes crystal clear just based on this article. We're talking about a truly legendary figure, a player who fundamentally shaped the game at the highest level for a very, very long time.
Right. And understanding the sheer weight of those accomplishments as laid out by the source, that's absolutely crucial context for this whole failed trade story.
Why is that?
Because it elevates it, doesn't it? It's not just some minor player movement. It's a historical near miss involving someone the source clearly defines as one of the game's absolute giants. The what if gets so much heavier, so much more intriguing when you realize the caliber of player we're discussing purely based on these accolades provided.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've established who Charles Barkley was, according to our source, in terms of his place in NBA history. Now, let's set the scene a bit more. Where and when did this almost trade actually take place? The source helps us pinpoint this.
It does. The article is explicit. It states that Barkley's professional journey began with the Philadelphia 76ers. So, Philly is the starting point. That's the team he played for when this whole drama unfolded.
The Sixers, okay. And the source gives us a very specific time frame for his tenure there, which is critical because that's the window when this trade had to have happened.
Exactly. It says he played for the 76ers from 1984-92.
84 to 92, an 8-year stretch.
That 8-year period, 1984 through 1992, is the confirmed time frame, according to our source, during which this almost deal must have gone down. Those were his formative years, right? Coming into the league, establishing himself, becoming that dominant force we just talked about.
Right, from rookie to superstar within that period.
Precisely. So any trade from the 76ers during that specific era, 84-92, would have been a massive deal, a huge shift for him personally, obviously, but also for the franchise. It would have marked the end of a really significant chapter.
Okay, so we've got the player, a legend based on the source. We've got the setting his time with the Sixers, specifically between 84 and 92. Now, let's dive into the real heart of it, the core story. How did this incredible near trade even come out? How do we know about it?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting because the source tells us the story comes straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. It comes directly from Charles Barkley himself.
Ah, okay. So it's his personal account.
Yes. He shared this story, this recollection of the almost trade in his own words. That's what the source reports.
And does the article say where or when he shared it, just for context?
It does give that detail. It notes he revealed it via Bleacher Report in March, so relatively recently, which kind of adds to the feeling of it being a direct personal memory he decided to share publicly.
Right.
That detail, reported in the source, lends it authenticity.
Okay. So Barkley himself tells the story. How does he describe it? What's the play-by-play according to his account in the source?
Well, the source quotes him laying it out step by step, and it really captures the drama of the moment. He starts with how he got the news. He says, quote, "I got a call one morning from his agent."
Okay, the classic agent call. You can just picture him picking up the phone, right?
Totally. Waiting to hear what's up. And the news delivered by the agent.
Oh, I did?
According to Barkley's account in the source, the agent told him, quote, "I got traded to the Lakers."
Wow. Just like that. I got traded to the Lakers.
That was the message, as reported, confirmation from his own agent. A deal was apparently done. He was going from the Philadelphia 76ers to the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most, if not the most, storied franchises in all of sports.
It is. It's monumental news for any player, let alone someone of Barkley's stature at that time. What was his reaction? Did the source capture his immediate gut feeling upon hearing he was heading to L.A.?
It did, and his quoted reaction is incredibly revealing. It speaks volumes. He said, quote, "About time, I can't wait."
About time, I can't wait. Let's unpack that a little. About time. What does that suggest?
Well, about time implies maybe some frustration with his current situation, or at least a readiness and anticipation for a change, like finally, you know. It suggests this wasn't something he was dreading. Maybe it was something he felt was overdue or even hoped for.
He was ready for a move.
Seems like it. And then the second part, I can't wait. That's just pure, unvarnished excitement, isn't it?
Absolutely. No ambiguity there.
None at all. It just radiates eagerness to join the Lakers, to get to Los Angeles, to start this next chapter. You can almost feel the buzz, the anticipation coming off those words as reported in the source. He was clearly thrilled by the prospect. This wasn't just business. It was something he genuinely seemed fired up about.
Okay, so he's on cloud nine. Mentally, he's probably already figuring out logistics, thinking about playing in the Forum.
Yeah, visualizing the gold jersey.
Exactly. But then, as happens so often in these kinds of sports dramas, there's a twist, a sudden reversal. The dream scenario, the one he was so ready for, apparently gets yanked away almost as quickly as it appeared. What happened next, according to Barkley's story in the source?
Right. The source quotes Barkley explaining the turn of events. He says his agent called him back. A second phone call, coming shortly after that first one that delivered the bombshell news.
Oh, no. The second call is never good in these situations, is it?
Rarely. And the second call, according to the source, delivered the reason why that initial "you're traded" news was suddenly invalid.
What was the reason? Why did the trade fall apart?
Barkley reveals it simply, as quoted in the source. The Sixers pulled out the deal.
The Sixers pulled out, so Philadelphia reversed course.
That's what Barkley's account indicates. After the trade had apparently been agreed upon enough for his agent to tell him it was done, the Philadelphia 76ers organization decided, for reasons not specified in this particular source, to back out. They nixed the deal.
Wow. After telling the player, that's rough. And the timing of this whole sequence, the source mentions something that makes it even more impactful, right? It wasn't like this played out over days or weeks.
Not at all. Barkley adds this crucial piece of context that really highlights the immediate personal whiplash of it all. He says, "We got a game that night."
He had a game that night. For the Sixers.
Yes. Think about that emotional roller coaster. You get the call, you're a Laker, you're ecstatic, about time. Maybe you start letting the idea sink in.
Yeah, maybe you even tell a close friend or family member.
Possibly. And then, boom, maybe just hours later, maybe even less, you get the second call. Hold on, deal's off, the Sixers pulled back. And the kicker, you still have to go to work that night, put on the uniform of the very team that just told you they were trading you and then decided not to and play a game for them.
That is intensely awkward. And frustrating, I imagine.
Massively. That detail about having a game that night provided in the source, it just adds such a powerful layer of immediate disruption, emotional turmoil, and professional awkwardness to the whole situation.
So, after going through that incredibly intense sequence, the elation of the Lakers trade news, the crushing disappointment of it being rescinded, and the immediate pressure of having to play for the Sixers that same night was his final stated feeling about the whole thing. How did he sum up his emotions about the deal falling through?
His description, as quoted directly in the source, leaves no room for doubt. He stated, quote, "I was so mad."
So mad. Not just annoyed or bummed out. Mad. Angry.
Exactly. That specific phrase, "so mad," it really conveys the depth of his feeling. This wasn't a minor professional inconvenience to him. This was a huge opportunity, something he was clearly excited about, something that felt real and within his grasp.
And then snatched away.
Snatched away abruptly under these really specific, difficult circumstances. It clearly hit him hard. It underscores just how real, how desirable that prospect of joining the Lakers was for him at that moment. And it explains the intensity of his frustration when that future vanished. It was personal, deeply personal.
Okay, so the picture's becoming clearer. We have Zora Barkley, the legend, the time frame, 84 to 92 with the Sixers, the potential destination, the Lakers, the dramatic sequence, agent call 1 traded, excitement, agent call 2 deal off, game that night, resulting in him being so mad. But there's still a key piece missing, isn't there? While we know it happened during that 8-year window, the source points out we don't know the exact year.
That's right. The article is very clear on this point. It explicitly states, quote, "It's unclear which year this was, so no precise date is given in the source material we have. We just know it falls somewhere within that 1984 to 1992 range when he was playing for Philadelphia."
Okay, so that ambiguity exists.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the fact that we know it must have occurred within that specific time frame allows the source itself to raise a really, really fascinating what-if scenario.
Yes, this is where the source connects the dots in a very compelling way. It uses that time frame uncertainty to pivot to a massive potential implication. The source posits, quote, "If the potential trade was before 1992, Barkley would have gotten the chance to play with 5-time NBA champion Magic Johnson."
Right. Before 1992. That's the key qualifier there, relating to Magic Johnson's career timeline. Let's really sit with that possibility for a moment, just as the source frames it. You have Charles Barkley, the player the source defines that incredible list of credentials. Top 25, Hall of Famer, MVP, 11-time All-Star, a guy whose playoff dominance we'll get into based on the stats the source provides later.
A force of nature, basically.
Exactly. And the source suggests he could have teamed up, potentially, with Magic Johnson, who is identified specifically by the source as a 5-time NBA champion.
The source is explicitly inviting us to consider this pairing. Based only on the descriptions it provides for each player, it sets up this potential dynamic. On one side, you have Magic Johnson, defined by the source through the lens of ultimate team success, 5-time NBA champion.
What does that title imply, based just on the source?
Well, winning 5 championships suggests leadership, a winning mentality, elevating teammates, performing under pressure, facilitation. Basically, everything associated with being the leader of multiple title-winning teams. The source uses that label to signify proven success at the absolute highest level.
Okay, so Magic is the established winner, the champion leader, according to the source's description. And you're potentially pairing him with Charles Barkley, whose own accolades, as listed by the source, scream individual dominance, consistent high-level production, and, as we'll see, maybe even some untapped potential on a team like that.
Exactly. And the source later backs up Barkley's dominance with those ridiculous playoff stat lines, the scoring, the rebounding, the surprising versatility.
Yeah.
So the potential synergy the source hints at is between Magic, the described ultimate winner and likely facilitator, implied by championships, and Barkley, the described engine of production, the dominant individual force.
How might those styles complement each other, based only on what the source implies?
Well, you can imagine, based purely on these descriptions, Magic's assumed court vision and passing ability, finding Barkley in positions to use his scoring prowess even more effectively. You can picture Magic's championship experience potentially helping to channel Barkley's raw dominance in crucial moments. The source, by specifically raising this before 1992 scenario involving Magic, forces us to think about how a five-time champion leader might have integrated or even amplified the skills of a player capable of those massive playoff performances the source details later.
It's a compelling thought experiment, using only the building blocks the source gives us: the champion and the MVP Hall of Famer stat monster.
Precisely. It adds so much more significance to that failed trade, doesn't it? Realizing that this level of legendary talent, Magic and Barkley, could have potentially joined forces in LA if the timing fell right within that 1984-92 window, as the source itself suggests we consider. It makes Barkley's so mad reaction even more potent when you think about the caliber of teammate he might have envisioned playing alongside.
Absolutely. Okay, so the blockbuster trade to join Magic and the Lakers didn't happen. It fell through sometime in that 84-92 window. So what did happen next? What was the actual path Charles Barkley's career took after this near miss, according to our source?
The source clarifies the next steps pretty clearly. It confirms that Charles Barkley was eventually traded by the Philadelphia 76ers, just not to the Lakers.
Where did he end up going?
His next team, according to the article, was the Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix. Okay. And does the source tell us when this actual trade to the Suns occurred?
Yes, it pins down the timing. It states the trade to Phoenix happened before the 1993 season. So if the Lakers' possibility existed up until sometime in 1992, his actual departure from Philly came relatively soon after that window closed, leading into the 92-93 NBA season.
And his arrival in Phoenix?
Right.
Wow. His impact there was immediate and, frankly, kind of stunning, based on what the source reports.
It really was. Immediate and profound are good words for it. The source makes sure to highlight two massive achievements in his very first season with the Suns.
Yeah.
He won the NBA MVP award.
In his first year there, after leaving Philly.
First year in Phoenix, think about that. Right after this period where the Lakers trade fell through, he lands with a new team and immediately hits the absolute peak of individual performance, winning the league's most valuable player award. That's a statement.
A huge statement. And it wasn't just the individual award, right?
Right.
The team had success, too.
Correct. The source connects the dots. Also in that initial 1992-93 season, his first year with the Suns, the article states, quote, "They made the NBA Finals."
MVP in the finals in year one.
Exactly. So he didn't just rack up personal stats, he led his new team all the way to the championship series in his inaugural season there. It creates this really striking contrast with the what-if scenario the source raised earlier. Instead of possibly joining a team defined by past championships, Magic's Lakers before 92, he goes to Phoenix and immediately becomes the driving force that propels them to the highest level, proving he could be the centerpiece of a finals contender.
That's an incredibly powerful narrative right there, just based on the source's timeline. MVP, finals appearance. It shows he didn't necessarily need an established dynasty to reach the top. He could elevate a team himself.
It certainly suggests that, based on the immediate results reported, and the source then sketches out the end of his playing days. It mentions that this 11-time All-Star, former MVP, eventually retired after the 2000 season.
Okay, retired in 2000. And did it say which team he finished his career with?
Yes, according to the article, his final stop as a player was with the Houston Rockets.
Houston. Okay.
So if you trace the career path strictly based on the information provided in our source, he starts with the Philadelphia 76ers from 1984 to 1992. The Lakers trade almost happens sometime in there, but falls through. He's then traded to the Phoenix Suns before the 1993 season. In his first year there, he wins MVP and leads them to the NBA Finals. And later, he finishes his career with the Houston Rockets, retiring after the 2000 season. That's the concrete history that actually unfolded after that fascinating Lakers near miss.
That's a really clear timeline based on the source. Now, to really hammer home the kind of player the Lakers almost got, the kind of player who then went on to have that MVP final season in Phoenix, the source gives us something really tangible. It provides specific examples of his, quote, ridiculous games in the playoffs, which were apparently shared by BallasLife.com.
Yeah, this part of the source is fantastic because it moves beyond the accolades and titles and gives us raw, concrete evidence of his on-court impact. These aren't just good games. The source uses the word ridiculous for a reason. They show what he could do when the pressure was absolutely cranked up in the postseason.
So let's break some of these down, maybe group them like you suggested earlier, to really understand the different ways he dominated according to these stats provided in the source. Where should we start? Sheer scoring power.
Makes sense. That's often the first thing people associate with him. The source lists one playoff game stat line as 56 PTS, 14 REB, shooting 23-31 from the field.
56 points. Just say that again. 56 points in a playoff game.
Yeah.
That's astronomical.
It's a massive, massive scoring output. But as you highlighted, look at the efficiency mentioned. 23 makes on only 31 attempts.
That's what, over 74% shooting?
Over 74%. So this wasn't just chucking up shots. This was incredibly efficient dominance. It tells you he was getting good looks, likely close to the basket or drawing fouls, and converting at an unbelievably high rate while still carrying that enormous scoring burden. Just phenomenal.
And the source gives us another example in that vein. 47 PTS, 12 REB on 16-26 shooting.
Right. Another huge scoring night, close to 50 points again, paired with strong rebounding, and the efficiency, 16 of 26. That's still over 61% shooting. Very, very high. So these two examples provided by the source immediately establish this pattern. Barkley as a prolific, efficient primary scorer who could also hit the boards hard in playoff settings.
Okay, scoring and efficiency covered. What about scoring paired with truly dominant rebounding? The source has examples of that too. It lists one game. 44 PTS, 24 REB.
Yeah, now you see the rebounding numbers just explode. 24 rebounds in a playoff game. That's controlling the glass on a whole other level. It speaks to his power, his positioning, his sheer will to get the basketball. Securing defensive rebounds, getting offensive boards for second chances, all while still pouring in 44 points.
That's just owning the paint.
Completely owning it. This stat line paints the picture of a player imposing his physical dominance on both ends of the floor, a truly monster double-double.
And the source indicates this wasn't necessarily a one-off. He gives a few more examples of him hitting these incredible point-rebound combinations. 38 PTS, 21 REB, 34 PTS, 20 RB, 30 PTS, 23 RB.
Seeing those listed together is powerful. It reinforces that hitting, say, 30-plus points and 20-plus rebounds in a playoff game wasn't some kind of fluke for him. It was something he was capable of doing repeatedly, according to these examples. It demonstrates a consistent ability to deliver these physically imposing, statistically massive performances when the games mattered most. That pattern really underscores his dominance.
Incredible consistency and dominance. But the source's examples also suggest he wasn't just a scorer and rebounder, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's evidence of surprising versatility in these playoff lines, like this one, 43 PCS, 15 REB, 10 AST.
The triple-double. This one is huge. 43 points and 15 rebounds is already an incredible game, as we've established. But adding 10 assists, that showcases a whole different dimension.
Playmaking ability.
Exactly. It shows he possessed the court vision, the willingness, and the skill to find open teammates and create scoring opportunities for others, even while carrying a huge scoring load himself. This stat line, provided by the source, directly challenges any perception of him as only a scorer-bounder. It reveals a more complete offensive player capable of facilitating the offense, too.
That's a key insight. What about the defensive end? Did the source's examples show any impact there?
They did. Surprisingly so, perhaps. One line listed is 35 PTS, 10 REB, 7 SDL.
7 steals. That's a lot.
It's a very high number, especially for a power forward. Getting 7 steals in a playoff game suggests really active hands, good anticipation, reading passing lanes, and generally disrupting the opponent's offense. It adds this layer of defensive playmaking to his profile that, again, might not be the first thing people think of, but this specific stat line from the source shows he was capable of making a big impact there, too.
And there's an even more comprehensive example provided, sort of combining multiple facets. 31 PTS, 20 REB, 6 AST, 6 STL.
Yeah, look at that line. That's arguably the most stuffed stat sheet among the examples given. You've got the elite scoring 31 and rebounding 20 for another massive double-double. You've got significant playmaking with 6 assists. And you've got major defensive disruption with 6 steals.
That's influencing the game everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere. This single-game performance, as highlighted by the source, paints a picture of Barkley as someone who could, on a given playoff night, contribute elite numbers across the board: points, rebounds, assists, and steals. Just an incredible all-around display of impact.
And one final stat line the source includes might raise some eyebrows. 21 PTS, 13 REB, 6 BLK.
The 6 Glocks, right. That's the standout number there.
Yeah, Barkley wasn't exactly known as like a premier shot blocker.
Generally not, no. He played with power and strength, but he wasn't typically listed among the league leaders in blocks like, say, a true center might be. So recording 6 blocks in a playoff game, as this stat line shows, indicates a surprising ability to protect the rim, alter shots, and provide a defensive anchor presence on that particular night. It adds yet another unexpected dimension to his capabilities, showcased by these specific examples from the source. He clearly had more facets to his game than just the raw power.
Okay, so let's synthesize this. When you look at this collection of ridiculous playoff performances that the source lays out, the incredibly efficient high scoring, the monster point rebound double-doubles, the triple-double demonstrating playmaking, the games with high steals showing defensive disruption, and even the surprising shot blocking game, what's the overall takeaway about the player the Lakers almost acquired?
The takeaway, based purely on these statistics provided in the source, is that Charles Barkley was a player capable of truly elite, versatile, and game-altering performances, especially when the stakes were highest in the playoffs. These numbers provide concrete proof of his ability to dominate games in multiple ways: scoring efficiently, controlling the boards, setting up teammates, disrupting defensively. He wasn't just putting up stats. He was imposing his will on the game's outcome.
And connecting these powerful, tangible examples back to the main story, the failed Lakers trade.
It just amplifies the significance, doesn't it? This is the level of on-court force. This is the kind of versatile playoff weapon that the Los Angeles Lakers were apparently on the verge of adding sometime during that 1984-92 window. You take these kinds of performances, these ridiculous stat lines.
You imagine them next to the players the Lakers already had.
Exactly. Especially if the source's suggested timeline is right and the trade could have happened before 1992, potentially pairing this force of nature with a player described as a 5-time NBA champion leader like Magic Johnson. These stats make that what if incredibly compelling because they show the sheer, quantifiable power Barkley brought to the table, particularly in the postseason. It wasn't just height, it was real, documented dominance.
It really frames the magnitude of that moment when, according to Barkley, the 76ers decided to pull back the deal. Which brings us full circle, back to that central event, the almost trade.
Yeah, it remains just a remarkable story to revisit. How close Charles Barkley apparently came to becoming a Los Angeles Laker. And his own account, particularly his strong emotional reaction being so mad, it just underscores how real and significant this possibility felt to him at the time. This wasn't some abstract rumor. It was something concrete enough to elicit that kind of deep frustration.
And when we reflect on the broader implications, sticking just to what the source material gives us, it really does offer a powerful illustration of how unpredictable sports careers can be and how much can swing on a single decision.
Absolutely. You know, the sports world is littered with what-ifs, tales of trades that almost happened. But this one feels different, unique even, because the source grounds it in the direct testimony of the player involved, a player of Barkley's stature, confirming how close it was and how personally invested he was in the outcome.
And his subsequent path adds another layer.
It really does. The fact that, according to the source, he was traded shortly after that 84-92 window closed, went straight to Phoenix, and immediately won MVP and took the Suns to the finals. It provides this fascinating counter-narrative. It shows that while the Lakers' move didn't materialize, it certainly didn't derail his ability to reach the absolute pinnacle of both individual and team achievement soon after.
It also makes you wonder, though the source doesn't say this, if that so mad feeling maybe fueled that incredible first season in Phoenix.
It's impossible to know for sure based only on our source, but it's a natural human connection to make, isn't it? You see the intense emotion tied to the failed Lakers deal, and then you see the immediate, dominant success that followed right after. It's certainly food for thought, but what the source does clearly illustrate is how one decision, reportedly by the 76ers management to reverse the trade, had massive ripple effects.
How so?
Well, the Lakers missed out on adding this dominant force. The Suns, on the other hand, benefited immensely, acquiring a player who instantly transformed their franchise fortunes, leading to an MVP and a finals berth. It's just a vivid example of how these pivotal, often behind closed doors personnel choices can completely alter the trajectory of players' careers and the competitive balance between multiple teams. One yes becoming a no changed so much history potentially.
And it leaves us with this incredibly compelling alternate reality to contemplate, all built from the details within our source.
Exactly. It helps us appreciate the amazing career Charles Barkley did construct the Hall of Fame, the MVP, the finals run, those unbelievable playoff games highlighted by the source's stats, while still allowing us to ponder that tantalizing parallel universe where he wore purple and gold, perhaps alongside Magic Johnson. It just highlights the razor-thin margins on which sports history sometimes turns.
Okay, so let's do a quick wrap-up of the key takeaways we've extracted directly from our source material in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We started by establishing Charles Barkley's legendary status, using the specific credentials the source provided: Basketball Hall of Famer, former MVP, 11-time NBA All-Star, and being named one of the top 25 players in history.
Right, setting the stage with his elite status.
Then we got into the core story, the failed trade, as recounted by Barkley himself, how sometime during his 1984-92 tenure with the Philadelphia 76ers, he was told by his agent he'd been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. We covered the sequence, the initial call, his immediate palpable excitement, quoting, "About time, I can't wait." Then the devastating second call revealing the 76ers had pulled out of the deal.
And the awkwardness of having a game for the Sixers that very night.
And his final, powerful reaction, as stated in the source: "I was so mad."
We then explored that really intriguing what-if scenario, the one explicitly raised by the source itself. The possibility of Barkley playing with five-time NBA champion Magic Johnson if the trade had occurred before 1992. We analyzed the potential synergy there, based strictly on how the source described the attributes of each player, the champion leader, and the dominant MVP Hall of Famer.
We also charted his actual career path, as detailed in the source, eventually being traded, but to the Phoenix Suns before the 1993 season. And that astonishing first year in Phoenix, immediately winning the NBA MVP award and leading the Suns all the way to the NBA Finals, before ultimately finishing his career, according to the source, as a Houston Rocket after the 2000 season.
And finally, we dove deep into those specific playoff statistics provided by the source, the ones shared by Bally'sLife.com. Those ridiculous game lines that offered concrete, tangible evidence of his scoring efficiency, his rebounding dominance, his playmaking ability, his defensive disruption, and even surprising shot blocking, showing the versatile, high-impact force he was in clutch moments.
It really paints a comprehensive picture, doesn't it? All drawn meticulously from the details presented in the article, focused on this one pivotal moment that almost was but wasn't.
A moment that clearly resonated deeply with Barkley himself and could have significantly altered the NBA landscape, we remember.
Absolutely. And that brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Considering everything our source material has laid out, Charles Barkley, described with all those elite credentials, demonstrably capable of putting up those truly ridiculous, game-changing playoff numbers. Considering he went on to win an MVP and reach the NBA Finals immediately after that potential Lakers trade window closed, and knowing the source itself prompts us to imagine him playing alongside a figure defined as a five-time NBA champion like Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
How might the entire balance of power in the NBA throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s look different? How might the specific, celebrated legacies of Charles Barkley himself, or even Magic Johnson, be fundamentally altered today if that one reported decision hadn't happened, if the 76ers hadn't pulled back that trade?
It's a huge question, a fascinating ripple effect to contemplate stemming from one decision that almost went the other way.
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We've unpacked the narrative, the player, the stats, and the profound what-ifs surrounding Charles Barkley's near-miss trade to the Lakers, using only the information provided in our source material. Hopefully it gives you a fresh perspective on a crucial moment in sports history that never quite came to pass.